tourism because it is very important for the development and the dynamic of development of the country. Greece has no problem of over-tourism. It deals with issues of a high concentration of tourists in a specific few destinations for a few months during a year. But the challenge of over-tourism as a systemic problem that already provokes reactions from local communities, well, it's not there. Greece does not have it and should not acquire it. So I think what is of interest in our discussion is how we manage from now on all tourist inflows in order not to have to deal with this challenge. Indeed, in certain Aegean islands for a few months a year, we start seeing that our infrastructure, insular infrastructure, are being tested. If we had more infrastructure, we could receive more tourists. There is no absolute limit, there is no absolute number after which we cannot satisfy any tourists. It depends on the capacity of our islands, about managing tourist flows when it comes to waste, to water management, to traffic on the roads. If we manage, we can have more tourists. Do we want more tourists? Do we want more visitors in the numbers, or do we want more visitors that are bigger spenders? We listen many people to government people talking to us about record arrivals. What is your objective? The objective is income. So we need to have a record income for sure. And this is connected, of course, to the number of arrivals. But what I'm looking at is the total contribution of tourists in the development dynamics of the country. And at the same time, the per capita spend of visitors, the spend per visitor, which depends on the prices that we charge, and we need to see that. We want our tourists to pay more in our country, but we have to be sensitive because tourism is a competitive product, and in no way, in no case do we want for these increased charges to make us have to be less when it comes to our competitive advantage. We may have a luxurious hotel in an island, as by its nature, it will have to be sustainable because this is what tourists ask today. You can't have a quality development if you don't focus on sustainability. Sustainable tourism can be small accommodation in a mountain destination with only few rooms, respecting the environment, being totally integrated in the local traditions. Infrastructure has been an issue from our discussions here, and in Greece, with many governments, we have had that politicians allow investments, constructions on an island, and then we start thinking, what about energy, what about water, what about traffic? How do you deal with that? Plus, I have to say that many times municipalities, even regions, don't know how to handle, or they are hostages to some local interests and cannot manage. What's the solution here? First of all, we need to distinguish infrastructure in infrastructure of a national stake and infrastructures that depend on local governments. If we see the ones of national importance, you will see that our country today has modern airports, starting by this airport today. Then the 14 airports that were conceded is important. Now they are modern and operational, and maybe we forget what they looked like a few years ago. We have two, but I guess one big size, however, private Greek airline. It's important for a country that it depends on air transportation for people to be able to come to our country. We have also new highways for road transportation with development dynamics in areas of our countries that were not exploited touristically speaking. And I give you as an example the highways in western Greece and the Patras Pyrgos road connection, plus some privatizations in our ports, which means that infrastructure for cruise ships are getting better, though we're still lagging behind. Now, about infrastructures that are of public interest, we have been a long way forward. When it comes to sustainability, we were required to catch up on lost time when it comes to basic infrastructure, especially when it comes to waste disposal. We're not yet where we want. There is some funding from national resources, but in organized recycling activities, we need local communities and local self-governments to participate. And I will give you an example, quite impressive, the case of the island of Tilos, a very small island with recycling over than 90%, because there was big enthusiasm by the local self-government, so we implemented a pilot program proving that in islands of this kind, recycling can be a real thing. And it's true that in small islands you have smaller needs in power, so you need less infrastructure for RESs, less needs in water. So small islands are the ones that are easier to be organized when it comes to infrastructure. And go ahead with the decarbonization. We have a planning for decarbonization, and we have a budget about 2 million euros, and that means that we have a financial reservoir which allows us to do better when it comes to water management. The answer there is not horizontal. It has to be the result of a survey per island, per area, and cichlids are of big concern because they have particular characteristics. We might need desalination, or we might need a combination of solutions. Now, temporarily, we try to find temporary solutions, but we design medium and short-term solutions for these infrastructures, not only on a local level. For example, providing a solution to desalination in our islands, instead of having separate contracts, each local government, maybe EIDAP can help us there, but we can do something bigger. EIDAP has the know-how. We can use it, we can exploit it to benefit islands where we cannot, or we don't know how to do those projects. What always challenged us is that there might be a lot of big investments and not just tourism. Let's take the example of Ellinikon. We don't know if there is some kind of a survey about the impact of this important investment in the traffic in Attica. Yes, because any survey that has happened before had a different traffic data. We do need an update, and we wanted to carry out such a survey. Of course, the traffic in this front will be further burdened. So we needed to see how to extend the road network, such as the regional road of Imitos and its connection with the Ellinikon. If we study that, maybe we find it a requirement, we find it necessary to do, but nothing can be done just like that. We need the time in order to think about such investments. You talked about the cichlids, and Mykonos and Santorini are part of the Cycladic Islands, and they're both at some kind of a standstill. Do you feel obliged to do something as a government? Yes, of course. This is why we have prohibited any new construction permits issued in Mykonos and Santorini, because we need to see how this this speedy impact on these islands is going to affect these islands. We need to have the local mapping first of the whole area. We need to see how these areas will be organized. I know that the State Council keeps checking the constitutionality and always has its reservations when it comes to horizontal measures and want us to do small scale designs at the level of the islands. And this is what we try to do. However, we know very well that Santorini and Mykonos are islands with a huge added value for our cultural product. And on the other hand, we know that pressure exerted for these islands can be anti-productive for our tourist product. And I don't believe in the self-adjustment of the market. I don't want these islands to be so damaged so that the visitors may not feel that they have a good experience. This is why we need to intervene. And when we intervened for the cruises as well on those islands, this was the object, because, you know, the cruise, although it has added value, we have to study this even further. If we have a visitor who comes to Santorini and can pay 1,000 or 2,000 euros the room, and at the same time we have a visitor who comes out for 6 hours, and it's not just one but thousands, and they create you know, this bottleneck when it comes to the sunset that everybody wants to watch at the same time. Now, we must have maybe an expensive ticket for the cruise, and the berth allocation will allow us to manage how these ships will approach ports. I think it's logical and reasonable enough in order to attract visitors, but also have the resources that will be recovered by the islands so that they may improve their infrastructure. Santorini, for example, may have more issues compared to Mykonos due to its very peculiar geomorphology with the caldera volcano. We need, of course, urgently a new port, which we do not have right now, and which will be a project run by the Ministry of Infrastructure as a project, a national project.
Of course, you know that there are some complaints on these matters, cruises, etc. And some other islands react and say that we do not have this problem of Mykonos and Santorini, so why should we pay the same tickets, the same clauses as Santorini? So the other islands say that Mykonos and Santorini should pay more because they have some particular burden. What we want is to drive the cruises towards other destinations, towards other islands as well. So the question is how we can expand the summer period, the vacation period, so we don't have a peak in July and August only, and at the same time to expand the network of destinations in other areas which are now at a lower key. And our national planning should be correct and responsible at that point, so we will not create any problems in the future related to some arbitrary development in years where regulation was in deficit. But nevertheless, if we compare Greece to Spain or Crete to Mallorca, for example, and we see the number of tourists and the structures there, we can see that Greece is in a much better case. And we are certain that we will not create problems that our competitors have. Let us speak about productivity. There is a concern that these tickets will not go back to the local communities. Can you ensure the local communities that they will benefit from these tickets, from cruise? Of course, these fees, the cruise fees, at least 1/3, 30%, is the sustainability fee, and it's going back to their local communities via the state budget. But nevertheless, it is the country as a whole that has to make changes due to the climate change, which are necessary in an era where the climate crisis is knocking on our door, and we have long-term issues to resolve. For example, the increase of the sea level in the long term. We haven't started dealing with this. What does it mean for tourism? Or the erosion of the coast and the coastline. What does it mean for tourism? Or some other times we might have investment on coast, and the licensing procedure would be very adverse for creating sandy beaches, while this type of actions could be environmentally friendly. We need to study our proposals, and we need to have regulation so as to create the framework to be proactive in terms of such challenges. Speaking about the climate change crisis, it is certain that as a country we will pay more for climate adaptation. The adaptation to the climate crisis, not only the reasons to decrease the CO2 emissions, for example, but we'll need more and more resources for protection and with the participation of local communities. Tourism is, of course, a very competitive sector globally. So there is criticism that these sustainability fees or these tickets will make the Greek tourism less competitive than other destinations, global destinations. And maybe this is a criticism against the government. I think that when we opened up the country in 2020 to tourism, right after COVID, this was a risk, but actually we won from that risk, and I would like to thank all those in the tourism sector because we worked together for this success. But of course, it is a success of the employees, those working in the tourism sector. I think it was a right decision. And if we turned the time 4 years back, I would say that we would take the same decision, despite the COVID lockdowns, to open up the country for the tourists. As a government, we have decreased taxes overall. But anyway, theory says that any additional tax is rolled over to the person or the entity that pays. And this is a cost that should not undermine the competitiveness of the Greek tourism. In relation to the burden, the benefit for the major industry of tourism is going to be positive. On the other hand, I do agree with you that there are some complaints from some industries, some businesses in the industry that just see the short-term profit and they increase their prices, for example, to gain more in just one summer. So this type of pricing or behavior is important to us, but more important is the overall sector pricing, the sectoral prices in relation to the quality that we offer. According to the surveys, we see satisfaction is high. All tourists are very much satisfied when visiting our country. So I think that this tax is not going to 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 be harsh on the competitiveness of the country. The overall good course of this sector allows us for this new tax exactly in order to handle these types of issues that need more resources. Closing the section regarding structures. What about the bearing capacity? Who should decide for every island? The local urban plans will be ready in 2 or 3 years from today. Planning is a priority for the country, especially for the islands. So on a local level, these plans are going to show which is the highest level of bearing capacity for the locality. Of course, we will need some horizontal rules for the country. And based on the decisions of the Supreme Court, we will have gradual restrictions in arbitrary building. I think that there is already a decision of the Supreme Court about the blind plots of land, and we are going to have a transitional clause, a transitional provision, so as to adjust to the Supreme Court decision, but provide solutions at the same time. Some days ago, there was a very important court decision that gives a holistic approach regarding environmental burden of the buildings, because we should not focus excessively on the height of the building. We should also focus on the materials used, the energy consumption, etc. And this energy regulation is in the court now, and the court ruling will decide on the bearing on this matter. But of course, the bearing capacity is going to be decided in concert with the localities. Of course, arbitrary and illegal building will be restricted. We have many islands without buildings, without villages. We have villages that we need to protect. The urban plans should provide options for alternatives. The expansion of villages has to be done in a very regulated way. For example, on an Aegean island, it would be better to have to rejuvenate the abandoned houses in the villages, at the Hora villages, instead of creating huge hotels near the coasts. The new regulation has further clauses, for example, about the iposkafa, these traditional houses that were built underground or inside the rock, and we are going to regulate these type of structures. And of course, we are open to hear the views of the experts on this matter, because we are not the only ones who know everything. Or swimming pools. Are we going to have swimming pools everywhere on the Aegean Islands if we have a scarcity of water? I'm a practical man, and I want to know what is the consumption rate of swimming pools. If it is 20%, of course, this is an issue. But if it's 1%, then a swimming pool will not be a problem in water management. So we need to not to forget our biases. We have to be very objective and realistic. Let me ask something. What is going to be the provision for the illegal building? Very soon you're going to, not illegal buildings outside the regulated villages. Very soon you're going to have the, the decision. But of course, the, 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 the point now is that we need to have the front side of the plot on a road. But of course, we need to define the road. Let us now speak about Airbnb. On the one hand, many abandoned areas in the city have been salvaged due to the Airbnb. On the other hand, people cannot find a house to rent. So which is the golden line? Which is the balance? Airbnb, the short-term leasing, is a reality that will stay with us for many years. And it has many positive points for the state. It can be easily taxed. It offers the opportunity to owners of property to use their property. And also it has it provides usages to buildings that are vacant for long periods throughout the year. But of course, we have some challenges, as for example in Athens, in specific neighborhoods, where we have seen not only high prices in rents, but the change, the alteration of the character of the neighborhood. That's why we want to study further the challenge. And in the central areas of Athens, we have stopped giving licenses for Airbnbs, for short leases. Of course, we have to remember that short-term leasing has given an extra income to many Greeks. But we should not forget that it never started as a competitor to hotels, because the terms were not equal. And that's why we have changed the statutes so that the Airbnbs and hotels would provide the same qualities to the visitors. But sometimes we lease our own home when we are away. So this was the initial thought of Airbnb projects. So Airbnb was for our own home, not for short leases. Also, in some other areas, Airbnb can create problems to students who cannot find a home. In Chania, for example, my hometown, if we have a problem with students who cannot find a house to stay due to Airbnb, then this is indeed a problem if this happens, and we'll have to give a solution. We have to see whether these problems exist. In a part of the society, some people say that it is very expensive to visit the islands, to go for vacations on an island. So they complain that they cannot go. They cannot visit the islands. I have heard this complaint as well, and I believe that we have some programs, social tourism, specialized tourism packages. We have provided motives to people to visit areas that have been challenged after natural disasters. Uh, so one answer to your question is to subsidize vacations towards specific destinations. Another answer to your question is that yes, of course, there are some destinations where prices are too high for most Greeks. But this happens in all countries in the world. Fortunately, there are many more destinations in Greece where we can enjoy our vacations not paying high prices. Of course, the prices are higher in comparison to 3 years ago because we have inflation in commodities and in services at the same time. But nevertheless, we can pay low prices, logical prices, and spend our vacations to lovely areas. So when we ask this question before the summer, we hear a lot of complaints. But after the summer, we see that that most people have gone for vacations. Many Greeks have country houses, and they can go there. So indeed, this is a problem. And indeed, we have to admit that some destinations during the summer are going to be too high for the average Greek to visit. But this happens everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world, in many other countries as well, because we want to attract a specific category of visitors. I do prefer this than free camping at the Mykonos beaches. I'm not against camping, but this is not the product, the tourist product that is going to give added value to the country. Another concern in Attica is that the coastline has to be free for all people. On the other hand, we understand that beaches can be developed and provide profit. I think that this is not a question. We have already had an application which was called My Coast and showed how we can use technology to give access to beaches or e-auctions, electronic auctions. And of course, control by the citizens themselves. So the beach bars are closely regulated. Last year, we had more than 20,000 inspections after complaints by citizens. We have solved this problem, while other countries, for example, Italy hasn't solved this problem. So we always need free beaches. We need Natura beaches where we cannot develop any bars or cafes or hotels even. But of course, at the same time, we need to open up the visitors of Athens to the beaches of Attica. This is what happens down to Riviera, from Piraeus down to Sunio. We have a very long coastline. The project of Flisvos, where your offices are, Mr. Papachelas, is in a standstill at the moment, but this will be soon resolved because we have already done several interventions. We need some free beaches there as well, at the Athens Riviera, but we have to accept that these 4 million people of Athens, residents of Athens, need to have access to free beaches without paying a ticket. Of course, we have to care for both solutions. We want to provide space, free space to the residents. On the other hand, the prices for an umbrella might rise because this is how the market works. We need to find a balance, and I believe that in the first year, when we implemented this measure, we had many positive impacts. So you do not worry that we'll see Greek citizens on the beaches with placards and saying that the tourists go away. I believe that we won't see that. We understand, all Greeks understand that tourism is our main, as our core business, and I believe that we are all allies. In Barcelona, where we saw these protests, correct me if I'm wrong, but Barcelona receives more than 30 million of visitors every year. Barcelona is smaller than Athens, while Athens receives 10 million. So we have oversaturation in Barcelona. The dynamics of the development dynamics in Attica is still important. It is a destination for every weekend, for every season in the year, throughout the year, 12 months per year. Thessaloniki is also opening up. And I see that even in Crete, there are companies, airliners, that operate throughout the year, and visitors come in order to enjoy the natural environment, to walk on the mountain trails, to enjoy Greek cuisine and the local celebrations, because this is a part of our branding. We are not only sun, sea, and swimming. Of course, this is a major attraction, but we are doing many things nicely. And still, we haven't capitalized on our cultural capital. People don't come here only to swim at the sea, but for our culture as well. For example, we can open other markets. The Indian market, for example, we could attract visitors who are not so much interested to go to the beach, but they are interested to come off-season and go to and enjoy our cultural products. And of course, we need to protect our cultural sites. In Acropolis, for example, we have a visitors management plan, which has operated very well. Acropolis has a very limited bearing capacity. You cannot have 50,000 people, but you can have more visitors if you plan them correctly. What about education and training? Why don't we have top public universities for tourism? Of course, we should have both public and private. It is important to have a top tourist professional school in our country. The personnel, the employees, those who work in the tourist sector can be expanded, so it will not be only for a short term, for a season. Young people can understand that they can build a career in tourism, and this will be a very creative career. We haven't reached that point, and we still need to cover many other aspects. We might even have agreements with other countries and import working capital. One of the major problem is accommodation for workers in the touristic industries. So you need to motivate companies. Of course, we need to use old hotels which are vacant. Via the Ministry of Tourism, you know that we have a very good cooperation with the representatives of the associations of hoteliers, and we are always open in ideas and proposals that will make our product a more competitive one. Okay, one last question. Are you going to impose any further tax? No, that's it. No more taxes. And one last question. What is your vision of Greece in 10 years from now as a touristic destination? By all means, I want to be rational. In 10 years, I want to enjoy the environment of all areas in our country, on the islands, on the mountains, everywhere. And especially on the islands, we want to protect them. So we might restrict further development if we consider that the environment is undermined. So we might say to the business people that you cannot develop any further, and this might have a political cost. I know it, but in no way should we forget that protection of the environment is a top priority. We want to cherish our islands. We want to be very organized in structures and buildings, and we want to make better islands and better destinations in 10 years from now, so as to attract more people who are going to be locals, not only visitors, not only tourists, to enhance and empower the communities. So you're not speaking about Mr. Kasalakis, who wants to be local on an island and work from there. I am sorry that I am not going to answer this question. So, but I come back to my example. You can work remotely while living on an island. But in order to do so, you need a health center, you need education, you need road network, and we have a lot of professors and teachers exactly in order to cover the needs of the islands. For example, if we have a high school, now we have a high school in Ravdos for just 2 children, but we can attract more families in the future since we have a school there. So this regional development will have a positive footprint on the environment, on the local communities, on keeping people at the regions by providing motives for decentralization. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prime Minister. Let me repeat that we have a full day tomorrow. We start at 10 o'clock with very interesting interviews throughout the day.